Good morning. It is Tuesday, September the 28th. Our top story. A man will appear in court today, charged with the murder of the primary school teacher Sabina Nessa, who was found dead in a London park 10 days ago.
Kochi Selamai was charged with murder last night. Tim Muffet is outside Willesden Magistrates Court in North West London. Tim, good morning to you. What more can you tell us?
Well, as we know, the body of 28-year-old Sabina Nessa was found in Cable Park in Kidbrooke in south-east London on Saturday the 18th of September. Now, the evening before, the primary school teacher had set off to a bar. It should have been a 5-minute walk, but she never arrived. And last night, the Metropolitan Police announced that a 36-year-old man has been charged with her murder. Kochi Selamai was arrested in Eastbourne in East Sussex on Sunday and is expected to appear here at Willesden Magistrates Court in North West London later today. 2 other men who were arrested by police investigating Sabina's death have been released under investigation. Now, on Friday, hundreds of people attended a vigil close to where Sabina's body was found, and her family have spoken about the devastating loss and grief they are experiencing. Her sister has paid tribute by saying that Sabina loved her family. Our world is shattered. No family should have to go through what we are going through.
Tim, thank you very much for that. We'll speak to you a bit later on this morning.
The army has been put on standby to help ease pressure on petrol stations after days of long queues and pump closures.
The Business Secretary, Kwasi Kwarteng, described the move as a sensible precautionary step, stressing the UK had strong supplies of fuel. But
as our business correspondent Emma Simpson reports, many motorists remain frustrated.
We're all wondering how long it can go on for.
That's what every driver wants to know after another day of queues, shortages and panic buying. Last night, the government put army tanker drivers on standby, ready to be deployed if necessary. And it also extended ADR driving licences, removing the need to do a refresher course to help keep drivers on the roads. In a joint statement, the fuel industry says with many cars holding more fuel than usual, we expect that demand will return to its normal levels in the coming days, easing pressures on fuel station forecourts. They and the government are urging people just to buy fuel as they normally would. That's easier said than done when there's a long wait.
People are getting frustrated with it. It's just, you know, the flow of traffic, how it is. I mean, they probably could have got some stewards down here just to keep traffic moving, and it stops people's tempers flying.
It's worrying. If you don't get none, there's no work, so...
All rules have gone out the window at the moment, I think. So people are desperate.
And there are now growing calls for health workers to be given priority access.
It is absolutely essential that healthcare workers and social care workers are able to get to work. They're already short of staff, and this just adds another problem on top of the already difficult staffing situation.
If things weren't bad enough, prices here at the pumps have also been going up. Filling your tank is now roughly 20p a litre more expensive than a year ago. The RAC says it went up another penny a litre since Friday and could go even higher in the coming days. Not because of all this chaos, but because of the soaring price of crude oil.
The UK has plenty of fuel. The question now, will panic buying continue at a faster rate than deliveries going in? The knock-on effects for businesses will grow the longer all this goes on. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
The American singer R. Kelly has been found guilty of trafficking women and children for him to sexually abuse over 2 decades.
Sentencing is due next May, and he could spend the rest of his life behind bars. Nader Tawfiq sent this report from New York.
To the world, he was the king of R&B and one of the best-selling music artists of all time. To his victims, he was their worst nightmare.
In rendering its verdict today, the jury delivered a powerful message to men like R. Kelly. No matter how long it takes, the long arm of the law will catch up with you.
A 5-week trial in New York laid out in lurid detail how the singer ran a decades-long criminal enterprise. Prosecutors said R. Kelly used a network of employees and close associates to recruit underage girls, boys, and women for sex. 45 witnesses gave evidence that R. Kelly was a predator who exploited his fame to entrap, control, and punish people, many aspiring singers. The accusations swirled around him for decades and reached a fever pitch after a documentary focused on the accounts of his accusers. One of those women, Geronda Pace, testified in court. She was one of the first to come forward and release this video detailing her experiences with R. Kelly at just 16 years old.
I was a victim of sexual abuse, mental abuse, and physical abuse, all at the hands of R. Kelly.
In an interview with the BBC, Kitty Jones also shared her story. She said many accusers were black women who felt their voices didn't matter to society.
Later, when I was introduced to one of the girls, that he told me he trained, and since she was 14, those were his words. I saw that she was dressed like me, that she was saying the things that I would say, and her mannerisms were like mine. That's when it clicked in my head that he had been grooming me to become one of his pets, that he calls them his pets.
The disgraced artist now faces a minimum of 15 years in prison. This has been an emotional trial for the women and men who've come forward. Not only has the jury heard them, they've believed them. It's another victory for survivors of sexual assault and the entire Me Too movement. Neda Tawfiq, BBC News, New York.
The Labour Party has pledged to bring back neighbourhood policing with a new plan to crack down on crime.
Our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming, is at the party conference in Brighton. Morning again. Great to see you, Adam. So, Labour policy has not exactly been the central focus of the last 24 hours, has it?
No, yesterday there was quite a dramatic moment where Andy MacDonald, who was the shadow employment minister and is a close ally of Jeremy Corbyn, resigned from the shadow cabinet, which is not normally the sort of thing you do when your party's having a big conference and it's their opportunity to showcase what they're doing to the world. The reason he resigned, kind of the front and centre reason he resigned, is that later on today there's going to be a motion on the conference floor about putting up the minimum wage to £15 an hour, and he wants to support that. But the party leadership aren't in favour of that, so he's had to resign from the shadow cabinet so he can support that motion. But also the bigger picture is, I think he is really annoyed that Keir Starmer is junking lots of the policies from the Jeremy Corbyn era, and also Keir Starmer is changing the Labour Party rulebook to make it much harder for somebody from the left of the party, like Jeremy Corbyn, to ever run in another future leadership contest. So I think there's two things going on, the vote today and just how he feels about how the party is going. And also it's interesting because you go to the events on the sidelines of the conference and you see people like Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, being quite critical of what Keir Starmer is doing and sort of hinting that he might be available if they wanted him to take over the Labour Party. So there was a lot of politics going on that's not the actual main policy stuff of the conference. But on that note, we're going to see the Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, who's going to be talking to you later. He's going to be talking about bringing back neighbourhood policing, having much more visible bobbies on the beat in people's local communities and setting up these new police hubs. So sort of like mini police stations, just so that the police presence in your neighbourhood is much, much clearer. They're also talking about next generation neighbourhood watch. How do you bring neighbourhood watch up to date for the era of WhatsApp and when loads of people seem to have those video doorbells?
Fascinating stuff. Adam, it's great to talk to you. And as you mentioned, we will be talking to the Shadow Home Secretary, Nick Thomas-Symonds, in just over an hour's time.
Elsewhere, friends and relatives of some of those killed by coronavirus will meet the Prime Minister later today. The Bereaved Families for Justice group is calling on the government to bring forward the date of a public inquiry into the UK's response to the pandemic, which is currently scheduled to begin next spring. Today's meeting will take place outside and with social distancing in place.
Only half of children and teenagers in England are currently willing to be vaccinated against COVID-19, according to a new study. Nearly 28,000 school pupils took part in the survey, which found more vaccine hesitancy among younger children and those from deprived backgrounds. The government says it will continue to work to increase vaccine uptake.
President Biden has received his COVID-19 booster jab days after it was approved for all Americans over the age of 65. Mr. Biden, who is 78, urged more people to get the vaccine, saying 23% of Americans hadn't received one dose yet. The boosters were also approved for those with underlying health conditions and adults working in high-risk settings.
Ministers in Northern Ireland have agreed to end the legal requirement to social distance in shops, theatres and some other indoor settings. The rules will be scrapped from 6 o'clock on Thursday evening, but face coverings are still required and people must continue to keep at least a metre apart in pubs and restaurants.
It's a big day for James Bond fans as the new 007 film finally gets its worldwide premiere in London. It's been a long wait, isn't it?
A lot, 2 years, I think, isn't it? Yeah. No Time to Die, which is Daniel Craig's last outing as the secret agent. It was meant to be released in April 2020, but was delayed 3 times because of the pandemic. Guests at tonight's premiere, lucky people, include Prince of Wales, Duchess of Cornwall, and the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.